Warning, at least for the beginning of this video, it's going to seem very adversarial. This is intended as a joke, so any hurt feelings are not intended. This is a framing device for humor's sake, and it's all in good fun. Also, chapters, as always, are below. Hello and hi and howdy and hello, it is me, Super Dude, and today, I am in your walls. I got something I'm passionate about before you today, and no matter how much I talk about this in IRL spaces, no one seems to be listening to me. So I shall drag all of you down with me as I discuss something I feel strongly about, and by God you're gonna hear me out, or I will eat you. You hear me? Shooters are a game genre that was created around the original Doom and rapidly became something else over time and space. Plenty of games are innovative in the shooter space and have innovated the genre over time, so now we're in a couple of camps. We have third-person shooters of the Fortnite and Grand Theft Auto variety, which tends to be what that means nowadays, though it used to mean cover shooters like Gears of War and Mass Effect and other copies. First-person shooters can be anything from colorful flying through the air hero shooting types to this. And a slew of other games that are shooters, but also kinda not. That's the thing with shooters. It's a very popular genre, and to try to tell you all the ins and outs of it is kind of a fool's errand. That's why we have genres like first-person shooter, third-person shooter, twin-stick shooters, not just shooter. When I was a kid, there was this Guinness Book of World Records Gamer Edition from 2008 or 9 that had a page for action-adventure games, and it didn't get more detailed than that. What does this mean? Devil May Cry is beside Metroid, is beside Zelda? What does action mean in this case? I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty of the shooter genre today, and I probably never will. No, I wish to talk about one game in particular, and how it doesn't really receive the love that I think it should, at least in the circles that I frequent. Let's think about the big shooters for a moment. We got the military shooters like Call of Duty and Battlefield. You got the hero shooters, which is less descriptive than you would hope. Overwatch is a fast-paced action-y shooter, Apex Legends is a battle royale, Valorant is a tactical shooter. They're all very different games, but they're all still hero shooters. And what that means is essentially just that you have a character, and that character determines the ability set, and it's different from character to character. I would be remiss not to mention the other more tactical shooters such as Rainbow Six Siege, Hunt Showdown, and Counter-Strike. These are the popular player versus player shooters on the market currently. Or is it?
It's false.
Wrong.
We got you.
Thanks to the magic of thumbnails, you know there's one more, and you also know I'm passionate about it. I'm here today to tell you why everyone should consider Splatoon as not only a good shooter... Oh. You okay, buddy? I'm here today to tell you why everyone should consider Splatoon as not only a good shooter, not just a competent one, but perhaps one of the best shooters out there, and that you should try it. Not just try it, but love it, coward. Here's the deal. I've been playing Splatoon since soon after the release of the second game, and I am deep in the ink on this one. This is actually my favorite PvP shooter experience, but some people I know in the real world, refuse to listen to reason. Is that because maybe I bring up Splatoon too often and maybe they're sick of me talking about it? No, the fault could not possibly be my own. No, there's something else here, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. I'm going to discuss with this straw man here that can't fight back the reasons why Splatoon is a fantastic game from top to bottom and that everyone should try it. I'm also going to discuss reasons why you may not want to try Splatoon, and I will counter those arguments as best I can. Are you ready?
3, 2, 1, go!
Splatoon is a third-person shooter created by Hisashi Nagami and developed by Nintendo. During the Wii U era, Nintendo looked around and noticed other consoles had a lot of shooters and decided maybe they'd take a crack at it. But there's a restriction here, and that's that Nintendo is aesthetically kid-friendly as a rule. Shooters are typically about killing people dead. Even in games where there's some sort of respawn mechanic, it's still emotionally a death that character is going through. So Nagami had that restriction going in. Make not just a shooter, but a kid-friendly shooter. Less Nagant, more nerf. Eventually, Splatoon sprung out of this process and has since grown into a very respectable franchise in Nintendo's lineup, being one of their best-selling even in the short time it's existed as an IP. Lots of people love this game already, but all this delightful history is worthless if it doesn't make you want to play it, so let's get into the game. To ease you in, let's talk about the main attraction in the Cephalopod celebration, the PvP fights, the simplest among them being Turf War. Each team of 4 chases into the middle of the map. Why? To paint the floor. In Splatoon, the bullets you fire are ink that the squid produces in their little back tank, ain't that cute? You can swim in your team's ink much faster than you can walk, so it behooves you to cover the ground in your ink. See a portion of the ground that isn't tainted by Technicolor? Remedy that. Enemy ink near you? Gross! Paint over it. This is the point of Turf War. Simply paint the ground. If, by match's end, there's more of your ink on the ground than your opponent's, you win. This is as basic as Splatoon gets, so let's spend some time here discussing what it is about this scheme that makes Splatoon different from its contemporaries. In most shooters, movement is as simple as walk, run, crouch. Get where you need to go faster, or do teabags to make your head harder to hit. Then you have games like Splitgate and Apex, where the movement is actually quite intense and can take a lot to learn how to excel at it. Splatoon's movement is both more in-depth than the typical walk, run, crouch shooter, but more intuitive than other movement-heavy shooters. The ink is the key to this. You move faster swimming in your ink, giving you the mobility to dodge shots and cover more of the map, to say nothing of your movement abilities whilst in your ink. You can swim up walls, including doing a surprise jump to splat enemies on the top quicker, do a dodge roll to avoid some enemy ink, or sneak up on the enemy without their noticing, which the community calls sharking. Conversely, moving an enemy ink slows you down drastically, which will very likely result in your death. Getting splatted. Since the walls between your zone and the enemies are aggressively apparent, this makes Splatoon a lot more readable to the layperson than any one teamfight in Apex. Just one sentence, here you're good, there you're not, is all you need to explain to someone new to Splatoon what the deal is, which is more than I can say for Overwatch. This visual clarity is super useful for communicating the game state, and that does a lot to put people's feet on the ground from the jump, before they even bother with the more advanced movement mechanics the game has to offer. The weapon classes in this game are also super dynamic and bring different decisions than any other shooter I've ever seen. When making weapon types, the devs asked themselves, okay, so these are basically liquid bullets, right? What weapon designs can we make that lean into bullets that are fluid? As a result, we have water guns, paint guns, buckets, brushes, and paint rollers, ballpoint pens, and shotguns, ignore that, umbrellas. There's a lot of variants to the weapons in Splatoon 3, and some bring properties rarely seen in shooters. Back to normal shooters for a moment. Up on that ledge, there's an enemy, but you can't see them. What can you do about that? Well, outside of just making your way over to them, it's really just chucking a grenade up there or waiting for them to pop their head out, right? In Splatoon, some weapon classes completely counter this strategy. Sloshers can throw their ink high into the air to hit targets on a perch, and Chargers have a blast radius after their initial travel, which can damage targets around cover. This further emphasizes that movement is your highest priority in Splatoon. Even for the more plant their feet and duke it out weapon types, there are other weapon classes that directly counter this game plan, leading to a more fluid game state. Each weapon has a grenade and special built in which cannot be changed. Your gun has its kit, and you have to get used to that kit. This forces you to understand not just the gun's strengths, but what roles they are meant to fill. For example, a roller with the Zipcaster and Autobomb are focused on quick movement, sniffing out enemies and coming at them from angles they aren't expecting. A true assassin class. Whereas another roller type with the Sprinkler and the Soda Machine, it's much more grounded as a result of their kit, acting as backup and support for their teammates to make pushes against the enemy party. They say nothing of what makes this main weapon different from that main weapon, and trust me, there's a lot between those two there. So in this way, you must find what weapon kits from what class suits your playstyle and learn how it functions. Since the kits are predetermined, you can guarantee that there's a design concept that the developers had for your kit in mind, and it's up to you to discover its hidden potential. So you can spend a lot of time digging into the weapon to discover what it's good at and what it's not. Any weapon can be your weapon that you spend the entire game within, and that dedication is rewarded by each weapon's depth and complexity of roles. And for those of you who really enjoy build customizations in your shooters, don't worry, Splatoon has that as well, but let's put a pin in that for a bit, okay? I describe all this to you now to break away at the first thing some say about Splatoon. It be a kid's game. A very similar but reframed statement is easy to learn, hard to master. Overwatch has some characters who are easier to use than others. Soldier is your typical shooter character. Mercy just points and heals, super easy, definitely not more in-depth than that. And Reinhardt is just big shield man, swing big hammer, fun to kill with big hammer. As you get deeper into the game, you can start playing with the more complicated roles like Genji, Zenyatta, Roadhog. Yes, the complexities of Roadhog. Oft forgotten is the true intricacy and difficulty of Hook. Splatoon is much the same way. Kids play this game, obviously. Look at how pretty the colors are. This would have broke my brain open if I was 7, and it is perfectly suitable for that experience if that's what you're here for. If you want to take your big roller and paint the ground in turf war, that's awesome, and I would never take that from you. But there's a lot more to it if you want to dig in. A lot more. Entire YouTube channels which dedicate themselves into digging into it, in fact. Don't mistake the cute aesthetic for lack of complexity. This game has that in spades. And that's before mentioning the actual competitive modes. The competitive modes are where, well, competition happens. What do you want from me? See, Turf War is about painting the ground more than the opponents, right? Hard to be competitive about that. You can lose for 2.5 minutes only to turn it around in the last 10 seconds through some good picks and quick painting. That's a party mode through and through. For competition, we have Splat Zones, where you must keep the zone painted and hold for the duration. Tower Control, where the tower must be commandeered by a member of your party and walked into the base of the other team. Rainmaker, where you must take a massive rocket launcher device into the enemy team's base, but be wary, the Rainmaker is slow and takes away from the other pieces of your kit, so you must be protected as you make your approach. And finally, Clam Blitz, the weirdest competitive mode. Collect clam shells from across the field until you can get enough to craft a football and throw it into the enemy team's net to score. Each of these game modes rewards different skill proficiencies, and therefore, different weapon types excel in different zones. And with the game modes changing every 2 hours, you're never too far away from a mix-up in the modes to finally get the one that you actually want to play, which for me is always Rainmaker. I love Rainmaker. But let's say for a moment that you don't want to play PvP at all. Maybe you're someone like me who really enjoys PvE cooperative experiences. That's fine too. This game features a huge, robust Horde mode with its own mechanics separate from the normal PvP mode called Salmon Run for you. This draws in a completely different group and has a completely different set of YouTubers who are into it and have talks about it. Links below for that. It also has a card game. We used to have a rhythm game, which we're hopefully getting back soon. And I haven't even mentioned the roughly monthly events that happen in-game where everyone competes on different teams to confirm what's the best among a choice. Which is better? Mayo or ketchup? Milk chocolate, dark chocolate, or white chocolate? If you were to take a trip to a remote island, would you bring food, gear, or something to have fun with? Make your choice and represent your team to definitively prove which is the right answer forever. During a Splatfest, everything changes. The levels, the game modes, the environments, the hub world, everything comes alive as the entire game is geared towards one thing, proving your side the winner. This is the most exciting moments in the game for me. Most games have events, but they aren't structured to be collaborative like this. Here's a Christmas event, get your Christmas skins. Here's a special game mode you can play for a limited time, have fun. But in Splatoon, these events are narrative and team-based. When you select your squad, you're do or die. Everyone in the entire Splatoon community is fighting all at the same time for their shot at the crown. And that's just electrifying to me. There are a lot of things to do in Splatoon that make it distinct. So let's get into why you may not want to play Splatoon. Reason number 1, that it's a kid's game, that's already been tackled. How about reason number 2? This game cringes hell. Immediately upon turning on the game, you're faced with these weirdos telling you the news, which is how you're informed of what game modes are active right now. You then step into a world entirely based off the Japanese hip-hop aesthetic, and all the little squids in Occupy walking around in swank-as-hell clothing. Let's stop here for a moment. Does this look at all familiar to you? An animal creature in clothing, big ol' eyes, not unlike an anthropomorphic Disney character. If that doesn't make it clear, I'm referring to furries. Referees? This may also remind some of the more anime-minded of a certain genre of manga featuring anthropomorphic monsters in the real world, which has its own issues. These squids are kind of sitting in the middle of these niche subcultures, and that may freak some people out and discourage them from experiencing this game. For this, I refer you to this quote of unknown origin. Do not kill the part of you that is cringe. Kill the part that cringes. These are cutesy little big eye guys who wear hip-hop clothes. The character designs are like almost anthropomorphic versions of fish creatures. I say almost anthropomorphic because... oh my god. The aesthetic design of Splatoon is punk, flashy clothes, and goofy designs that communicate the same sort of thing that I think furries are trying to communicate, and that is unrestrained goofiness. I know furries that would basically tell you this is the case. They're having a good time. They're being silly. They're remembering what it was like to be a kid again. And Splatoon is no different. This is meant to be a bit silly, and therefore I encourage you to be silly with it. As for those who would take it into the sexual direction, please ignore them. There are a few types of cringe in this world, but I suspect that this is just cringe at someone else's enthusiasm. Put another way, this is cringe that balks at sincerity. And we love sincerity here in Super Dude Shack, right? I think we might have just accidentally backed up into a sincerity session. Well, with that being the case, it is important to remember that we embrace cringe here. It may not be for you, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it, and it certainly doesn't mean you should denigrate others for liking it. We don't yuck other people's yums, we give them the space to be happy. And it's a really great game outside of that anyway, so I encourage you to try it. push through it. You may find you like it as well. Reason number 3 that you may not want to try Splatoon. Nintendo is for casuals. One of my friends actually did state this as their reason the other day, and to that friend I say, hello, thank you for watching. I'm going to edit this point to also include the I don't own a Switch crowd to make it an overarching, why play Nintendo games? Nintendo is, odd. They are way bolder than any other console company out there, which is both good and bad. Bad in that they will just not follow industry trends until a decade after they've been implemented by everyone else, like with moving to HD or implementing functioning online play. Bad in that they could just make your favorite game in the world, then not make a sequel for a decade or more, because they don't really care about pleasing you. The opposite side of that coin is that their boldness causes them to make games that are genre-defining. Do you know what genre Pikmin is? It's a real-time strategy, or RTS for short. The most popular RTSs are games like Age of Empires, Command & Conquer, Northgard. This looks nothing like those, which means Pikmin has its own Pikmin likes out there. It's its own thing, even though it technically is an RTS. No, it is not. How about Metroid? What genre is Metroid? Oh, yeah, that's right. It made one. How about Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, whose design was so fresh in the open world space that it quickly inspired copycats and is referenced all the time by other developers when talking about open world game design? How about games like Animal Crossing? How many of those existed before the original Animal Forest? And that same designer made Splatoon, which is completely distinct from its contemporaries in the shooter genre. Nintendo has a habit of making these really interestingly distinct games within their spaces, owing to their desire to be bold and make distinct gameplay experiences. So for that reason, it's a good idea to get a Switch and try out the games that Nintendo has to offer. That's my pitch to the non-Nintendo people out there. Here are some of my favorite Nintendo games on screen. Get cracking. And for the Nintendo is for casuals people, you're not wrong. Nintendo's been pretty vocal and notorious for destroying competitive spaces around their games. The Smash Brothers community suffers from that all the time. But I promise you that Splatoon does not have this problem. There are competitions actively supported by Nintendo, and their patch notes for Splatoon are plenty detailed compared to Smash patches. I don't blame you for having this vision of Nintendo, it is well deserved. But Splatoon is built with competition in mind, and it is well supported by the company as a result of this. Or at least I hope that's why. Please keep supporting us, Nintendo, please. And there is so much depth to explore in the movement mechanics and the weapon kits, to say nothing of build customization and team tactics. There's a lot to learn and explore, and it is a damn good time learning it. Speaking of customization, what if you're here for an aesthetic experience overall? What if you just like putting on cool clothes or trying out digs and showing off to your friends? This game has loads of customization in both meaningful and completely arbitrary ways. Your battle tag can be edited to show off your achievements. You have a locker that you can place your stuff into and really show who you are to your Octo buddies, and also you can edit your drip for the PvP games. Finally time to take this pin out. This is the customization with gameplay consequences. Clothing carries various buffs that change how your character functions in play, in some small and in some large ways. Clothing that hides your swimming so you can sneak up on others. Clothing that makes you move faster, giving an edge to those squids using bulky weapons. Hats that extend the respawn timers of your enemies, but also to yourself, meaning it is best used by snipers to punish your foes for daring to get within your range. And one of the real money makers, at least at time of writing, Last Ditch Effort, which does nothing unless you're losing. Then it supercharges you with these 3 skills combined, giving you a massive edge over your enemies and perhaps giving you the boost you need to turn the tide. You gain these skills through playing the game naturally, and certain brands of clothes prefer some skills to others. You can fully customize any clothing if you simply must wear your witch boots. The community is great in this game as well, and the game is built to foster an inclusive environment, almost on accident. Since Nintendo is obviously invested in fostering a kid-friendly environment, there aren't a lot of easy ways to communicate with people in a match. You have, "Booyah! This way!" and when you go down, these may seem restrictive, and that's because they are. But security always comes at the cost of freedom. Think of it this way. Who in the comments has ever seen someone who's a woman get yelled at in a multiplayer game? Or a child? Or someone who isn't the best at speaking English? Or perhaps the most universal experience, people flaming you for not being up to their standards. Removing the ability to use voice also removes the xenophobic factor from games, allowing people of different genders, races, ages, and skill levels to try the game without needing to out themselves. As a result, Splatoon is more inclusive to people outside of social norms, so you can feel safer playing in this space. And for those who still want voice chat, either use Discord or download this Nintendo app and connect your account. You can talk to your squad there. Also, just because the callouts are restrictive doesn't mean they aren't capable of conveying meaning. Here's a video by Squid School communicating common callouts, what they mean, and how to use them. There's a lot to enjoy here, but one thing that could be quite difficult, and one of the big reasons why people may not want to get into Splatoon is reason number 4, the control scheme. Splatoon uses gyroscopic controls for their aiming, which allows for greater accuracy than a controller normally allows. See, most shooters on consoles have built-in aim assist because the stick doesn't allow for the fine control that a mouse allows for. Shooters are inferior on console because of that control difference, but thanks to Splatoon's gyroscopics, it doesn't suffer from this handicap. Instead of the fine control being in your forearm, it's in your wrists, making Splatoon perhaps the most accurate shooter on any controller out there. The downside of this, of course, is that you have to learn a new control scheme to play the game. This isn't technically true, you can use stick aiming as well, but some purists argue this is not the best control scheme available to you. And while they're correct, that doesn't mean you have to listen. Games are about having fun, not about being the most optimal. You go, girl. But don't worry, mate, everyone had to do this when they started. This is a journey you make with others, so there are resources and practice drills out there to help yourself get better, to say nothing of just playing the game story mode to learn in a controlled environment. Oh my god, I haven't even mentioned this. Splatoon's got a story which is currently wrapped through every game, including its DLCs. I won't pretend that the story is a mind-blowing tale that deserves awards, but I will say the story is anime as hell and features some really banger soundtracks. Plus, the DLC for Splatoon 2 has a really great narrative that is considered the best single-player content in the series so far, with more difficult and complex levels, a fun new aesthetic, and a story which actually made me cry? I'm a baby, what can I say? There's something here for people interested in digging into lore and secrets about characters as well. Lots of secrets. So after all of this, talking about the robust multiplayer, the wealth of meaningful customization, the engaging and goofy story, the beautiful aesthetic, the horde mode, which I didn't even really talk about and is my favorite part of the game, by the way, is there any other reason why you could possibly not want to play? Well, yeah. Reason number 5. It's $60. Nintendo games do not go on sale. That's kind of the curse of Nintendo. Since they don't really sequelize the crap out of their IPs and their stuff is console exclusive, their games sit on shelves for years at the same price. Here's Breath of the Wild, a game that came out 6 years ago near the beginning of the Switch's lifespan, $10 off from its original release price. Being a Nintendo fan can be expensive, and I can understand you going for the free alternatives like Apex and Splitgate. Those are fantastic games, and I don't blame you for not wanting to spend your money. And of course, the flawless, impenetrable reason number 6, I simply don't want to. I obviously can't dig into reason 6 any. It's bulletproof. There's nothing that I can convince you if that's where you're at, I can't convince you of it. But I hope that here today, I've convinced some of you to give Splatoon a try, or at the very least that there's something of value here. It is a fantastic game in its genre, and I don't want people to write it off just because of its aesthetic, its design, or its home console. It is fantastically designed, and a real standout in the third-person shooter genre, and no one should write it off. It's a bit like fighting games, right? My fighting game of choice was Guilty Gear for a while, and when I watch competitions, I basically understand everything that's happening in a match of Guilty Gear. But then there's also Tekken, a game that I have never played, never want to play, but still looks super cool, and people love that game. I didn't go, sorry. I watched the EVO Tekken tournament last year and just listened to the excitement, the screams from fans, which were louder than basically anything I had heard, except for maybe at Street Fighter. And I knew in that moment that Tekken is not for me, but it's still a great game that so many people love, and I should appreciate that. Appreciate what something does right, even if it isn't for me. Perhaps when you're watching pros play Call of Duty or Apex, or playing them yourself, you can slip over to Splatoon and give it a try. Or if I failed in my endeavor to grab your interest for this game, just appreciate the enthusiasm present there, and revel in the chaos of a different game, and perhaps think to yourself, you know, it's not for me, but it still looks pretty cool. Okay, remember how we accidentally backed into a sincerity session earlier? I gotta make good on that promise. What is it about Splatoon that makes me so passionate about it? There are 3 reasons predominantly. The first is that I'm a sore loser. I avoid most competitive games because I get crabby and I'm quick to anger on a good day, so it's all just a bad mix for me. I'm always working on getting better, I have for years, but it doesn't change that central fact. Splatoon is easier to shrug off a loss on thanks to its aesthetics. If you feel yourself getting angry, look into the eyes of your turfling and realize that this game is silly, and you're even sillier for getting so mad. Its vibe is better for me than some of the other sweaty games out there, so it's my haven. The second reason is that I became endeared to the characters, and now I genuinely care about the story. I'm here for the story content. I want to see what happens to Agent 8 in the Off the Hook group. Captain Cuttlefish is a homie who is getting over his racism, and the lore aspects of this game are intentionally deep to invite your theorizing on the background of the world. Nintendo has this habit of making cute worlds with lore that implies something much darker, and Splatoon is no different. To say nothing of this game's waifu potential, and no, I don't mean that this is a waifu, it's my waifu. I'm not saying that. I'm meaning the psychological effect that happens in your brain that the internet has collectively named waifu. Lex Torius has a video on the subject, rather comprehensive, and he gets into what exactly it means to have a waifu in a psychological sense. I found that neat. It's basically what I'm trying to say here. That's reason 2. And the final reason, and the reason deepest inside of me is... There is a meme I saw recently that encapsulates Splatoon's music. I'm not sure where it originated, but I'm going to guess it's from Tumblr given the format of this here. It goes as such. Splatoon fans are like, you gotta listen to Freshwater Freakin' It, that one is straight fire, and links you to a song composed of synthesized cat meows, first graders playing recorders, and vine booms. And then by the end you're absolutely furious because they're right. This game's music covers a wide range of genres, with the original's rock, to the second's more eclectic indie sound, and the third's punk sound. But regardless of genre, the energy is high, the music is loud, and the instrumentation, insane. The song I am playing for you now is a variation of Calamari Incantation, basically the anime power-up song at the end of every story in Splatoon so far, or at least the main stories. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to turn the song on so you can hear some of the other examples, but this is for real my first love when it comes to this game. The thing that just blew me open and I was like, yes, Splatoon forever now. I encourage you to listen to all of the versions of Calamari Incantation. They all rule. The songs are made by in-universe artists, so you can recognize someone's distinctive style as games go on. You have the new game Seaside, whose punk rock defines the newest game. You have Wet Floor, the flagship band from Splatoon 2, fusing pop and electronic together to define that game's indie rock stylings. Ink Theory, with their classical instrumentation remixed into some truly ear-bleeding tunes. Splatoon 2's DLC produces a completely distinct vibe with Deadfish, a haunting lo-fi album that is another reason why people who've played that DLC love it for how different it stands out from the original game. You have the idol groups from each game, which brings an intense pop feel to each Splatfest, completely changing up the game's identity for the nighttime. This year is Splatoon 3's idol group, Deep Cut, playing their Splatfest theme, Anarchy Rainbow. And my personal favorite artist in-game, Omega 3, the specific musicians for Salmon Run, who play electronic turntables, timpani, and cello. The music is rampant. Frampant? The music is frantic and rampant to represent the chaos of the salmon waves, and the music almost never features a regular time sequence. It's not meant to be danced to, not even really meant to be listened to, it's just suffered through as the complete chaos of the salmon constantly threaten to overtake you. The music of this game is an acquired taste to the upteenth degree, but as someone who is, well, autistic, but also grew up playing Sonic games, I am drawn to games with really lively music, which is just screeching with all of this lively energy. And if you take that idea and take it to its logical conclusion, you get this. Synth cat meows, first graders playing recorders, vine booms. And it's perfect. And with that, I am out of things to talk about. I hope I've done some decent job convincing some of y'all of this game's virtues, and that people should try it out. I have linked to various videos by Squid School to help on-ramp people into the experience, but there are plenty of other people out there who play different styles, and Jem, the person who runs Squid School, is just one of the many styles of play out there. I encourage you to search for yourself outside of my own recommendations. Just like with the last time we did this, let me know in the comments what your sincerely happy exists and the stuff that you love, and I'll be right there with you, shouting about the things that I love, probably mostly Splatoon, at least for now, and how most people should try it out. I am Super Dude, and I thank you for watching. I'll see you when I do. What the hell is this?